What you think about when you're born into a fire? Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. Listen up now, because we're never dropping out. Beat the odds, beat the big house. The brains are bigger than the doubt. We've been thinking for ourselves, never let the truth fade away. This is bigger than ourselves, we won't let the world burn away, burn away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race.
We're not talking about the haters anymore. Ever.
Kill it anyway to play.
We're done.
Haters face the world's mistakes. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway.
Oh, let's pause that. Hold on, I gotta text Mariah something. Give me just a second. All right, let's see here.
Hey daddies, it's me, the Linda Binda from TikTok. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to thank you for watching Cold Beer Confessionals with Will Bird. I think that's just incredible. I've watched a few episodes and I'm just like very intrigued. But you know what I'm most intrigued in is Big Daddy's meat stick. I heard that it's very thick, like a good old German sausage. You know, Linda and her coochie loves that. Oh, never mind. Let's not go there. Anyways, I hope you have a good show and enjoy it as you can. There's a lot of weird things that go on, especially when it comes from the realm of Linda Bindaland. So, enjoy the show. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Welcome, everybody. I am Will Bird, and this is the Cold Beer Confessional. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, I'm taking care of something at home. If you want to support the show, do it at the links. Do it at the links on the screen. The mods have the links or whatever. Greatly appreciate it. That's how we pay the bills around here. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me. Sorry for the late start. I'm trying to figure out. Mariah said she heard Mariah said a gunshot near our home woke her up, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on there. But I also have a fire going, so it could have been, like, the fire's not, like, going. It's, like, dying down when I left. We were burning brush, so it could have been something in the fire. I guess it could have made the noise. Shit pops and cracks in a fire, so nothing else has happened. But I was trying to get to the bottom of that. She said she heard it, and Lisa, the campground manager, heard it. So I was trying to figure out what was going on. Anyways, thank you guys for joining us. Thanks for being here. I'm Will Bard, this is Cold Beer Confessional. Got a couple things to complain about tonight, I guess. Let's start. I had some links that I didn't get to share for last night's show. Okay, that one. Those are both good. Okay. I don't know what the fuck. First of all, bird update. Here we go. Bert. All audio only. Just listen.
I've had a conversation with several friends and and my dad, who have all convinced me, that we are never going to talk about the haters again. They're not important. What they do and what they say is their business. I'm done.
It only took you this long to learn it. Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
Not going to talk about it. Listen, give us a thumbs up, will you? That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. The reaction is what we're there for. Are you fucking retarded? And that only lasted a few minutes. Are you shitting me? Are you shitting me? And then another 20 minutes later, are you shit? I haven't looked at anything. I just saw the clips. Is that really what happened? God damn it, Bart. God damn. Did he say anything about his address? Where he lives? Damn it, Bart. I thought we were finally on the same page. I thought you had finally learned your lesson. Apparently not. Anyways. He implied something about our community. Perhaps I need to listen again. Let's see here. I don't think he can physically stop himself. I think it's impossible for him. All right, let's talk about, before we get into some more Hexess stuff, some information actually came out, some updated information came out about, you guys remember, it seems like it's been forever ago because there's like scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal But you guys remember Signalgate, right? Well, the IG just completed their investigation and published it. Now, I'm not going to make you read the whole report. Instead, we're going to use a summary. But Hegseth is touting this as a victory. Hegseth is touting this as a victory. Let's see how close to a victory it was. Bird always needs money fast. He's probably got a hot tip on somebody throwing a fight or something.
Having a great week. This, of course, is Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, also known as the Secretary of War. And this document could be a real problem for him. This is the brand new unclassified Inspector General report about his use of an unsecured text platform to share sensitive information about an upcoming strike with at least one person who probably shouldn't have been on that group chat. You probably remember Signalgate? Yeah, this report is about that. Now, I read this entire report, and I'm going to share with you the findings of the Inspector General.
By the way, just reading from CBS News, just their title, okay? It says, Pentagon watchdog finds Hegseth's signal chat violated regulations and could have endangered troops. Does that sound like he's vindicated? Hacked his bank account or Zelle? Uh-oh. Wasn't me.
Before I do that, I want to first share with you what Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, said about these findings. He posted, no classified information, total exoneration, case closed, Houthis bombed into submission. Thank you for your attention to this IG report. How about if you decide, after hearing all the facts of what the IG actually found, whether you think Hegseth is totally exonerated and if this case is actually closed. And before you jump into the comments, which I know you want to do, and tell everyone how you feel about this based on talking points you're hearing from your favorite news channel or from your favorite news influencer, I encourage you to watch this whole video so you actually know the facts. Now, I know it's easier to watch a 30-second video or have someone spoon feed you what you want to hear so then you can form a very strong opinion based on half-truths.
Also violating federal law because they're using Signal and they're not retaining official records, of course.
And sound bites. But that's not how it works on my channel. I believe if you want to have a strong opinion and share that opinion publicly, it's probably in your best interest that you have a full picture and know all the facts first, right? P.S. I am going to actually email this Inspector General report to you so you can read it for yourself in tonight's Facts HQ email, so make sure you've signed yourself up for that. Okay, let's get into it.
Oh, here's this statement from Chief Pentagon spokesperson Sean Purnell, who works for Hegseth. He calls it a total exoneration of Secretary Hegseth and proves what we knew all along. No classified information was shared. This matter is resolved and the case is closed.
This is a deep dive, so buckle up. The IG released 2 unclassified reports this morning in connection to this Signalgate incident involving Secretary Hegseth. One was about Hegseth's use of Signal to share this information, and the other evaluates the Department of Defense's policy related to how and when Defense Department personnel is allowed and not allowed to use messaging systems that are not controlled by the U.S. government. So in this video, I want to focus on the 84-page report about Hegseth's actions. The IG says, yes, Pete Hegseth shared specific details of a strike package through a Signal group chat that had 19 people on it, including a journalist, on March 15th, 2025. That was about 2 hours before the actual strike in Yemen on the Houthis happened. And yes, the IG report includes a screenshot of some of the information that Hegseth shared.
They literally said he shared information classified as secret and no foreign. If you don't know what no foreign is, a secret and no foreign means it's at the secret level, so anybody with a secret clearance can receive that information. No foreign means no foreign nationals, even if they have secret level clearance. So if you have something that's top secret, no foreign, and you have some Israeli partners or some, who the fuck ever, UK partners or whatever, and they have top secret clearance through us, it doesn't matter. No foreign means no foreign nationals whatsoever, even if they have the clearance or even if they have a higher clearance. Let's say you have secret and you have, an Israeli top secret. It doesn't matter. No foreign.
in that Signal chat. The IG traced the information Hegseth shared to an email that was sent to him and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff the day before from the commander of CENTCOM, which is U.S. Central Command. That original email delivered to Hegseth on March 14th was classified as secret and not releasable.
So he copy and pasted a secret, no foreign email into Signal chat, and then sent it and claims no secret information was that, no classified information was there. Bullshit. Which he can. He does have the authority to declassify information, based on his position. It doesn't seem like he did whatsoever.
To foreign nationals, meaning don't share this information with even our allies. And if you share it with people in this country, those people must at least have a security clearance to see secret information. That March 14th CENTCOM email included detailed information on the means and timing of the strikes in Yemen that would happen the very next day. The IG found that
things are adding up at a real bad time for Hegseth, by the way. Inspector General Unclassified Report original email was marked as secret, no foreign. On top and bottom, did not contain portion markings.
While this email from CENTCOM did have the words secret, no foreign at the top and bottom of the page, it did not contain portion markings on each paragraph. So according to DoD policy, if you are sharing classified information with other people who are allowed to see that classified information, you have to mark every portion of that document with some kind of classification. That means every subject, title, paragraph, section, tab, attachment has to have a TS for top secret next to it, or an S for secret, or a C for confidential, just as examples. In fact, this new IG report is an example of how to mark every portion with a classification. If you read the report, you see that every single paragraph has...
See this? See the? Well, I have to zoom in for you. This is how we got briefings when I was in the military. So this title section, the use is in the interest of DoD and other USG missions. That's unclassified. Unclassified. DoD I 8170.01 further. That's unclassified. Unclassified title. DoD policies for controlling, classifying, and declassifying information. That's unclassified. Unclassified. According to DoD D 5205.02E, that's unclassified. So every one of these paragraphs has to have the portion markings on them, because you might have one briefing that's good for you, but it's got 3 different classifications on it.
A U in front of it, which means this paragraph contains unclassified information. So what the IG found was, yes, the email that Hegseth originally received from CENTCOM.
I did get a donation. Thank you very much. It says, Bert loves Bird. Thank you very much, QID. I appreciate it. I don't know why the alerts aren't working currently. I haven't had time to look at them, but thank you very much for the donation. I appreciate that.
Did include classified information marked as secret and not releasable to foreign nationals at the top and the bottom of the page. It did not contain portion classifications of S for secret next to each paragraph. But regardless, one of the key lines in this report is right on the first page, and it says, based on our review, we concluded that some information the secretary sent from his personal cell phone on Signal on March 15, 2025, matched the operational information U.S. CENTCOM sent and classified as secret, no foreign.
So that should be it. On the first page of the fucking briefing, it says, based on our review, we concluded that some of the information the secretary sent from his personal cell phone on Signal on March 15, 2025, matched the operational information U.S. CENTCOM, Central Command, sent and classified as secret, no foreign. The secretary declined to be interviewed for his evaluation. In his July 25, 2025 statement, he provided the following information. He received the email briefing from U.S. CENTCOM commander classified as secret, no foreign on March 14th.
That doesn't mean everything Hegseth shared on Signal was classified. The IG report says some most definitely was. But that's not the end of the story. The IG also says the Secretary of Defense has original classification authority, which means Hegseth, as the Secretary of Defense, can look at a piece of classified information and decide whether he thinks that information has to stay classified or if he thinks it can be released publicly. Well, the IG said because of that authority, if Pete Hegseth believed that sending out exact...
But He's supposed to notify people, right? So other people know how to handle that exact information.
Details about strike times 2 hours before they happened on a Signal group chat that included a journalist didn't need to be classified, then it wasn't classified at the time. Though the IG could not find any kind of official documentation that Hegseth declassified the information prior to sending it to Signal. Instead, the IG said Hegseth told them that he used non-specific general details to develop an unclassified summary, which he then provided.
This is not true, right? He would have been better off saying, well, in my head, I declassified that, and that's why I sent it out through Signal. Doesn't matter as far as the record-keeping portion. That's still illegal. That still violates U.S. law. But saying that I gave a non-specific general details, that's a lie. We had packages and times and targets and everything.
To senior government officials on that Signal group chat. Now, it's up to you to decide whether sharing exact strike times is non-specific.
A donation. I just saw that one come through too as well. Michaela Robertson bought you 5 6-packs. Happy holidays. Thank you very much, Michaela Robertson.
Specific general details. Regardless, that doesn't mean Pete Hegseth is off the hook. The IG report says Hegseth used his personal cell phone to send that information to the Signal group chat.
It's almost like the enemies know that these people are lazy, dumb pieces of shit, and they can just monitor their cell phones.
Which the IG says was a decision that not only is against DOD policy.
DOD policy prohibits the use of unapproved, non-approved, commercially available messaging applications such as Signal for official business with limited exceptions.
But also, regardless of whether Hegseth declassified it or not, the secretary's actions created.
Yes, Mike Penny told everybody they had to be on a Signal group during the 10 days of darkness.
A risk to operational security that could have resulted in failed U.S. mission objectives. And
they're just, so their excuse for this is like the Biden administration used it. Yeah, but what did they use it for? Did they keep records? Blah, blah, blah. And if they did, and they did it inaccurately, call them out too. Like, I don't know where they get this. Like, well, the Democrats did it, and I don't see you calling them out. Well, there's been no fucking headlines about it. Let's see it.
Potential harm to U.S. pilots. Lastly, you should know the IG found that by using Signal to send this information, Hegseth was not in compliance with record-keeping laws that require all of the secretary's communications to be preserved. Obviously,
I think it's because they know they're doing so much shady shit. Like, everybody knows that all of this official interaction between cabinet members and staff and all this has to be kept for a record. It burnt Trump in his first administration. Now they don't keep any records of anything.
Signal deletes messages, so the IG said in the report that Hegseth couldn't provide them with the information they needed to conduct this information. So instead, the Inspector General had to rely on the journalist who was accidentally on that Signal group chat to provide the screenshots of the messages Hegseth sent. That's also a problem. Oh, and Hegseth refused to sit for an interview with the Inspector General about his use of Signal and instead provided only written answers to their questions.
With
which
5
is
lawyers.
Unusual. The IG did not give.
The Secretary of Defense ought to sit down with his fucking IG when he's being investigated. Holy shit, dude. You shouldn't be hiding behind a wall of fucking lawyers. You all work on the same team.
To their questions, which is also highly unusual. The IG did not give any kind of recommendation and did not refer Hegseth for any kind of criminal or disciplinary action as a result of this investigation. All the report says is that everyone in DOD leadership needs refresher courses on how not to use Signal or other non-government issued platforms to share classified information, and also needs courses on how to preserve documents. So, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you. You now know exactly what the report says. There's no clear-cut answer. So now that you know everything that the IG found, is this actually case closed? Make sure when you share your opinion in the comments, which I know you want to do, put a green checkmark emoji next to your comment so I know you watched this whole video.
So there you go. That's Signalgate. We kind of knew there wasn't going to be a whole lot out of it. But again, enough bad news builds up around one person. Trump is loyal to no one. And I think the world's a safer place with Hegseth gone, honestly. And just get a goddamn general, dude. Somebody that's been in it for their whole life, that doesn't play red or blue, that reports to you. You don't need a fucking yes man there. You need somebody that's going to tell you the goddamn truth. Holy fuck. All right. Let's go on to, where do I want to go to now? Let me see. Sorry, I started using Telegram because my phone app is unreliable, so I'm trying to find the links I want here. Oh, here we go. Here's a good one.
When is mainstream media going to start doing their job and asking questions like, why did Trump fall asleep again today for the third time this week on camera? This is from today, Thursday, December 4th. Why is he covering his hand, his right hand, once again? Why is that hand bruised around the first of every month? I've been making videos about his bruised hand around the first of every month for months now.
Needed to end
Third time
this conflict once and for all.
Here's a closer look.
Third time this week he's fallen asleep in public, and somehow he still talks about Sleepy Joe.
This is from today. There's a bandage and makeup on that hand. The first of every month he gets bruised. Why could that be? I think I know why.
The patient keeps having bruising on this hand because he's most likely getting a monthly infusion of a drug called Kisunla.
That was Epistema Crisis on Instagram. You should follow him. He's in the medical field. He's way smarter than me. He's way smarter than you, and he knows stuff about Alzheimer's patients. Trust me. Watch his videos. There's been a lot of speculation this week, and it's picking up a lot of steam with independent media, not mainstream media, that this guy right here is getting monthly infusions of something called Kisunla, which slows the progression of early onset Alzheimer's symptoms. And it makes sense, folks. It makes sense. He falls asleep in the middle of the day 3 times this week on camera. But Biden fell asleep all the time. I'll bet any amount of money that I can find more videos of Trump falling asleep this week than you can find of Biden falling asleep.
Honestly, what do they have on Biden other than, you know, some Jake Tapper and some people that fucking had falling outs with him, right? And he's not a very good public speaker, right? He's never been a good, even when he was young, he wasn't that good of a public speaker.
For the 4 years he was president, he is doing less and less public appearances. He's doing less and less public appearances after dark when people with early onset dementia start sundowning. Your sleeping patterns and your sleeping rhythms get all kinds of screwed up. And this guy, in the middle of the night last week, posted 160 times in 5 hours on his trash social network.
Once I turned 65, I developed skin. I'm sure you meant to put something else there.
That's what sundowning people do. They obsess on something and they keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So when is mainstream media going to start asking questions? I know he surrounded himself with essentially state-run.
Where's Jake Tapper? Writing this expose about how he's mentally insufficient and falling asleep.
I get it.
Skin condition.
Start asking
Okay.
questions. This is concerning. Okay, look, if he is sick, which I truly believe at this point he is sick, there's something wrong. They're not telling us something. He needs help, and he cannot run a country, a company, or even a motor vehicle at this point. This is how MAGA Republicans need this to go down. They need him to make it to January 2027. At that point, they can install Vice President Eyeliner I banged the couch J.D. Vance for 2 years. If J.D. Vance serves more than 2 years of Trump's term, he is only eligible to run for president one time. But if J.D. Vance serves 2 years or less of dictator Trump's term, J.D. Vance can run for president.
I think that might be their plan, honestly. I don't know that J.D. Vance will do it well because he's like Trump invented MAGA and MAGA's loyal to him. They've already called J.D. Vance out a couple different times, right? But after the 2-year mark, J.D. Vance can take over. They can move Grandpa to the home, right? He can still do rallies. He can still yell. He can still tell people to support J.D. Vance if that's what he wants to do, right? But I don't know if Trump will ever step down willingly, but there might be some background work going on. Then J.D. Vance has got to win 2 more elections.
4 times and be president for a total of 10 years. That's best case scenario. That's wish list for MAGA. There's the hand. I'm telling you, Trump's not going to make it to January 2027. He's in pretty rapid decline. Someone needs to ask about this, and someone needs to ask about him falling asleep. ASAP. Mainstream media, do your goddamn job and start calling this out. He is the president of the United States. We're the biggest, best country in the world. And it's being run by somebody who is obviously sick.
Okay. What else do we have? While we're on the topic of Trump, let's do a speech wrap up. I like this guy because he counts how many times they use how many times they blame Biden for something, how many times they said Obama, how many times whatever. This is from the little roundtable meeting they had yesterday.
I watched Trump's announcement in the Oval Office today.
By the way, the name of this channel is called Let's Discuss Something, and we watch his videos all the time. So go follow him on TikTok or Twitter or Instagram or whatever you have. Let's Discuss Something is the name of it.
I watched Trump's announcement in the Oval Office today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. They all together spoke for less than an hour. Trump probably spoke for less than half of that, and Trump mentioned Biden 12 separate times, Kamala Harris once, and Barack Hussein Obama once.
here's a really, really, really dark take, I guess. And I'm not making any threats. I'm not saying someone should do this. I'm not giving any fucking guidance. I'm not saying what ought to happen. I'm saying what could happen. The way to solidify the base behind the runner-up is a successful attempt. If you know what I'm saying. It worked for Erica Kirk.
Other people mentioned Biden too, and we'll talk about how much when we get to their notes, but this whole thing was about cafe standards. Now, when he started off just saying it was about cafe standards, I didn't personally know what that was about. He does not go on to explain at all what that's about, so I had to look it up. Cafe standards is your corporate average fuel economy, and it's regulations that set the fleet-wide average fuel economy targets for passenger cars and light trucks sold by automakers. Also, this whole thing gets really confusing.
All right, so cafe standards is basically how much fuel economy you have to get for corporations. So corporations from now until 2031, their fuel economy across their entire fleet was supposed to be getting better, right? So that drives manufacturers to make better performing cars if they have to have a certain amount of their fleet, EVs, whatever. But as a whole, when you look out at Walmart and they have, I don't know, 600,000 vehicles, their fuel economy this year has to be this much, and then in 10 years it goes up a little bit more, and then in 2 years it goes up a little bit more, in 2 years it goes up a little bit more until it reaches that peak. Those are the CAFE standards. They're for light-duty vehicles and heavy-duty vehicles, and the heavy-duty vehicles are more laxed, of course, because we got tractor and trailers and shit. And automakers must meet these targets or face fines or purchase credits from overperformers like Tesla. So if Ford can't meet the CAFE standards, then they can purchase credits from Tesla, which is way above the standards. But either way, it's going to either cost them in the pocketbook or they're going to have to meet these standards, okay? It stands for Corporate Average Fuel Economy, U.S. government regulations administered by Highway Traffic, NHTSA on Department of Transportation that set fuel efficiency targets for automakers' vehicles. Oh, I'm sorry. It's for automakers, not fleet owners. My bad. I think I said Walmart earlier. Aiming to boost miles per gallon. So when you look out across their entire lineup, they have to have a certain average mile per gallon, right? Fuel economy.
And don't worry, that's not your fault. The entire press conference was just filled with contradiction after contradiction after contradiction and lie after lie after lie. For example, he starts off by saying that they ended Joe Biden's EV mandate, something that he somehow ran a campaign on, and Joe Biden
doesn't have anything to do with this.
Never set an EV mandate, not once. In fact, this exact thing that he keeps saying is Joe Biden's fault, these CAFE standards, are directly contradicting to the idea that there was an EV mandate, because it sets standards through 2033 of where these cars, gasoline-powered cars, need to be, which directly, just on premise, contradicts with...
By the way, CAFE standards were first introduced in 1975. In 1975 by Gerald Ford. Congress put these together. He sent them to Gerald Ford in 1975. But they keep trying to blame it on Biden.
The main thing that he brings up, which is that Joe Biden had an EV mandate. Trump says we have more gas than any country in the world. While we do produce more gas than any country in the world, what he's probably referring to is oil reserves, because that would be the actual measure of how much you have. Okay.
I don't know this for sure, but I think we're like 10th or 11th. But he always says we have more oil than anybody in the world.
Okay. And we have less than 9 other countries in the world. I've gone over it plenty of times. There are 4 people in a row that he's asking or bringing up their name, and he asks where they are. They're all standing just directly right behind him. He does not know who these people are at all. And then he says it would have cost $5 trillion to build charging plants to make...
Oh, yeah. Trump accidentally called J.D. Vance an idiot. Did you guys see that? I know what he meant, and I'll explain what he was trying to say, but because his Alzheimer's was kicking in, he called J.D. Vance an idiot.
Up for the EV mandate, which again is just completely made up, but $5 trillion is the operating budget of the entire U.S. government for an entire year. He thinks that's how much it would cost to bring EV vehicles onto the market in the U.S. And then he says that California communists were regulating the car industry. Then he says that these car manufacturers, instead of just refurbishing plants that they stopped using in the U.S., they're just knocking them all down and rebuilding them.
I'm sorry, incompetent, not an idiot. So before we finish this video, let me see if I can find it. Hold on. Because I don't have the link for it.
If it gets too far out of hand, we'll just do it the old-fashioned way and take y'all back, put all y'all out of your misery.
Well, good morning, David, and to all the other MAGA bullies in this world. I'm British John. I'm a former military intelligence hacker.
Sorry, that video was playing. So listen. I want you to listen to Trump here, okay? Trump calls J.D. Vance incompetent. I understand what he's trying to say, but his Alzheimer's is kicking in, and it's not working. Who was the person that Trump ran against? Who did Trump run against for president? Kamala Harris, who is a female, okay? So then listen to this clip. What is happening is his brain is trying to put Biden as the person he ran against, even though he didn't, and Tim Walz. But Biden and Tim Walz could never go together because there's Biden-Harris, then it was Harris-Walz. There's no possible way he can say, I was debating against Biden and J.D. Vance was debating against Walz. So instead, he gets this.
Resign over the fraud scandal in his state.
And who should?
Tim Walz. Over the fraud scandal in his state.
Look, I think the man's a grossly incompetent man. I thought that from the day I watched J.D. destroy him in the debate. I was saying, who was more incompetent, that man or my man? I had a man and he had a man. They were.
So what he's trying to say here is that, like, I was debating Biden, who is incompetent, and J.D. Vance was debating Walz, who's also incompetent, and I don't know who was more incompetent, Biden or J.D. Vance. I'm sorry, or Walz. But there's no way that can fucking work. You see what I'm saying? Because if we're talking about Biden, then you'd have to be talking about Harris. And if we're talking about Walz, then we'd have to be talking about Harris. There's no way. But he's like, I don't know who is more incompetent, that man or my man.
Over the fraud scandal in the state.
Look, I think the man's a grossly incompetent man. I thought that from the day I watched J.D. destroy him in the debate. I was saying, who was more incompetent, that man or my man? I had a man and he had a man. They were both incompetent.
Resign over the fraud scandal in his state.
And who should?
Tim Walz. Over the fraud scandal in his state.
Look, I think the man's a gross.
So literally, he's calling J.D. Vance incompetent. You guys see that, right?
Incompetent man. I thought that from the day I watched.
He said they had a man and I had a man, and they're both incompetent.
J.D. destroy him in the debate. I was saying, who was more incompetent, that man or my man? I had a man and he had a man. They were both incompetent.
Resign over the fraud.
There's a little bit longer one, if I can find it, where he says he tries to clear this up by saying, you know, I ran against Biden once.
Tim Walz, Mr. President, do you think he should resign over the fraud?
He destroy him in the debate. I was saying, who was more incompetent, that man or my man? I had a man and he had a man. They were both incompetent, and I had a man and a woman. I thought she was very.
That's where he tries to clear it up. So he just realizes he fucked it all up. I had a man and a woman.
Both incompetent, and I had a man and a woman. I thought she was very incompetent too, but now she's leading the field, and I think she's leading the field in this for the nomination. Anyway, look, that's up to them. That's up to the Democrats. You know, the problem with them is they have really bad policy.
Tim Walz, Mr. President, do you think he should resign over the fraud scandal in his state?
I'm going to let it all play so they can't say I clipped it.
Over the fraud scandal in his state.
Look, I think the man's a grossly incompetent man. I thought that from the day I watched J.D. destroy him in the debate. I was saying, who was more incompetent, that.
By the way, I don't think Kamala Harris is leading at all. I think Gavin Newsom is leading by a wide margin. At least that's what I think.
Or my man. I had a man and he had a man. They were both incompetent, and I had a man and a woman. I thought she was very incompetent too, but now she's leading the field, and I think she's leading the field in this for the nomination. Anyway, look, that's up to them. That's up to the Democrats. You know, the problem with them is they have really bad policy.
Wallace, Mr. President, do you think he should resign over the fraud scandal in his state?
And who should?
So he literally called J.D. Vance incompetent. That's what just happened. In case anybody's keeping tabs.
Which again isn't true because none of these factories are actually coming back. If they were, then there would be news about the factories that are being built, and yet there isn't. And then he says that we will have a huge market share in chips, but it has nothing to do with the Chips and Science Act, even though that's directly what the Chips and Science Act does. Next up is the eunuch Sean Duffy. He mentions Biden twice. He starts talking about Buttigieg and then Trump.
This was the ultimate cuck move, okay? Sean Duffy says the name Buttigieg the way it's supposed to be said. And then Trump says, no, verbally, right in front of everybody. He says, no. His name is Buttigieg. So Sean Duffy says, oh, you're right, sir. Buttigieg. Then later on in the speech, he says Buttigieg, and looks at Trump. This is the most cucked person ever, dude.
And then he says that we will have a huge market share in chips, but it has nothing to do with the Chips and Science Act, even though that's directly what the Chips and Science Act does. Next up is the eunuch Sean Duffy. He mentions Biden twice. He starts talking about Buttigieg, and then Trump cuts him off right away and says, no, it's Buttigieg. And then Duffy, because he is a eunuch with no testicles, immediately goes, you're correct, sir. It is Buttigieg. I'm really sorry. And then he says that having lower mile per gallon standards will lead to fewer deaths on the highway. He doesn't explain exactly how that would happen, but just says because there will be newer cars.
Having lower mile per gallon standards will lead to less highway deaths.
Doesn't actually affect any of these car emission standards because they were set for certain years in the past and has nothing to do with new cars being built. And then literally like a normal person starts to say Buttigieg's name again, realizes that he doesn't want to lose his dick in addition to the balls that he's already cut off for Trump, and decides to go boot edge. Literally, that's what he does.
Yes, the most cucked man in America currently. He can't even pronounce another person's name.
He's a eunuch. He has no fucking balls. Then the Ford CEO gets up and he goes, 80% of Fords sold in the U.S. are made in the U.S. And then immediately.
This was crazy too. I haven't watched this video, by the way, but I love the way he's covering it. He gets up and says 80% of Fords sold in the U.S. are made in the U.S. Then he says, we don't ship jobs overseas. Wait a second. 80 of what I'm assuming would be a full 100 to make 100% are made in the U.S. So where the fuck are those other 20% made? Not the U.S.
Follows that up by saying, we never moved manufacturing offshore. Now, this is a soundbite that he wants to say for Trump to hear and only for Trump to hear because it directly contradicts the thing that he immediately said preceding that, which is that 80% of the cars are made in the U.S., which means by fact that 20% of the cars are not made in the U.S., which would mean that they had to move out of the country some of their manufacturing capability, but he says they didn't. So, whatever. Trump then starts ranting about how in South Korea and Japan they have these small cars, but they weren't allowed to be made in the U.S., but now they're going to be allowed to be made in the U.S., and then he randomly just says the word Honda, which is not an American car manufacturer, and then
he just randomly says Honda.
Trump then starts ranting about how in South Korea and Japan they have these small cars, but they weren't allowed to be made in the U.S., but now they're going to be allowed to be made in the U.S., and then he randomly just says the word Honda, which is not an American car manufacturer, and then he says that the companies in the U.S. left the U.S. to start building their cars in other places, which does directly contradict with what the Ford CEO just told him, and then says that it was because there were stupid people behind the Resolute desk. He doesn't remember that he was one of the people who was behind that desk. And then
in fact, he's the one who signed the new trade deal with Mexico and Canada, which is where most of Ford's 20% of manufacturing that isn't in the U.S. is.
Says that by deducting the interest on car loans, because he doesn't know how any of this works, it will essentially make your car payment half. Anyone think that your interest on your car payment is half of your car payment, and also that deducting that from your taxes will just put that money in your pocket? Well, if you do, then it's going to be confirmed by you later with another person who claims that if you're able to deduct a vehicle, that money just goes directly into your pocket, which it does not. It, by definition, would be a deduction, which is a deduction on your taxable income. But, you know, all this is too complicated for someone who doesn't have a brain like literally everyone in that room. Oh, yeah, and then he says that they had to fight lunatics to get this done. Next up is Mike Kelly, not to be confirmed with Mark Kelly, who's an actual...
So even if every bit of the interest was taken off for a car loan, because it's not like a home loan, right? Let's say you got a 5% interest rate on a $60,000 loan for 72 months. That's 6 years. Total interest is about $9,000 of that $60,000. Is that half your payment? Let's say a loan amount for $40,000 at 7% over 60 months, 5 years. The total cost is $46,393. So $6,393 was the interest paid over 5 years. That's not half your payment. That's the dumbest thing.
Decent human being. Mike Kelly mentions Obama once, no Biden's, and says that the CAFE standards were done by Obama, which again directly contradicts what both Trump and Duffy has said.
CAFE standards were not done by Obama either.
So, you know, there is that. Next up is Trump.
Again, CAFE standards have been around since 1970s.
Here's a direct quote. "We had a lot of great rallies, didn't we? Pennsylvania." Literally, that's all. He just says we had a lot of great rallies, didn't we? Pennsylvania. Where is the FBI Butler report? Anyone curious anymore? It's been a year and a half. Anyone still curious like me? Then a congressperson comes up and says that these were Biden EV standards, which again directly contradicts with the exact topic that they're talking about here, which is regulations around gas vehicles. So not the same thing. And then another politician, Troy, I guess, stands up and says that these were in fact Obama era standards. So again, contradicting each other. And then another politician gets up and says that we were unable to sell electric vehicles in the US and says that they just couldn't get them off the lot. There are 4 million electric vehicles currently in the US. And then they say that Ford had to build 2 electric vehicles in order to make an F-150 and sell it, and that those electric vehicles would just sit there, which does kind of make sense because this is an average across your fleet, but actuality doesn't make sense because they weren't just making electric vehicles that are just sitting there, because then we would have stockpiles of these cheap electric vehicles that they were trying to get rid of, which is just not happening. Trump at one point starts to have a revelation. He's like, I was just thinking about it. There's all these cars and these electric vehicles being built. And then he forgets what he's talking about and starts trailing off and just starts saying that rich people get deductions, but middle income people never get deductions. Then Trump says, like he said yesterday, that the car industry was stolen from us, which I don't know what that means in a free market world. And then he says that these CAFE standards were made up by people who hate our country, and then says that Joe Biden doesn't know what CAFE means. If you brought up CAFE near him, he'd just say, where is the CAFE? And then a congressperson stands up and says, we are doing the opposite of giving tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires, even though that's what the big, beautiful bill
sure you are.
They'll brag about for a long time during this press conference is giving tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires. And then Trump says that all prices are down, but affordability is a hoax, a Democrat hoax.
Affordability is a Democrat hoax. The word affordability is a Democrat scam, a hoax, a con job.
Everything comes down. But the word affordability is a Democrat scam. They say it and then they go into the next subject. And everyone thinks, oh, they had lower prices. No, they had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Everything comes down.
Then why isn't anything more affordable?
There's this fake narrative that the Democrats talk about, affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. You just say it. Affordability. I inherited the worst inflation in history. There was no
You inherited 2.7% inflation. It was actually really good, and it's went up since then.
affordability. Nobody could afford anything. The word affordability is a con job by the Democrats. There's this fake.
The word affordability is a con job by Democrats.
And then he says that Biden had the worst inflation ever because of the stupid things he does. Nothing in particular, just because he's stupid. And then he starts bitching about the price of eggs again, and then calls Democrats, quote, great con people. Then Ted Cruz gets up. He mentions Biden once and says that they're working to get these cafe standards to zero. Basically, there are no emission rules or mile per gallon rules or anything like that. And then says that this will drop the cost of cars by thousands of dollars, even though the White House put out something saying that they expect this to drop the cost of a car by $1,000. The White House also says that will save the American taxpayer $109 billion. I did some math. There's 15 million cars about sold per year in the U.S. So in order for it to be $109 billion, it would have to be this same reduction, the same cost savings of $1,000 for every single car built for 7 straight years. And even at that point, it would equal 0.5% of the total amount of money that Trump claims has been brought in investments in the U.S. alone in just 9 months, which again today.
But let's say your car is $1,000 cheaper. That's not going to happen, but let's say it is. Let's say your car is $1,000 cheaper, but it gets much worse gas mileage. What are you saving over 5 years? Let's say you go from 35 miles a gallon to 25. What are you saving?
He says is $18 trillion. Trump gets asked a question about affordability, and he just starts talking about recruitment numbers for the military. I swear to God, he just out of nowhere. And then he says that they're going to release all of the video for that second strike, you know, the war crime that the drunk committed. And then he says that sea drugs are down 91%, and he doesn't know where the other 9% is. But don't worry about land drugs, because they're going to start bombing people on land too. Literally in the same sentence, he says that 2020 was rigged, Joe Biden is stupid people, and stupid people can't rig elections, all in one sentence. He said last year 300,000 people died from drug overdoses, which I wouldn't bring up except for the fact that yesterday he said 200,000 people per year died from drug overdoses. So just by a logical conclusion, you have to assume that 100,000 people died from drug overdoses yesterday. He says the following about Jack Smith. Jack Smith is a thug and a failed prosecutor and a bad man and an evil man, and he hurt a lot of people, and he's a bad guy, and he's a sick man. He's a sick man. Something is wrong with him. He says he knows that 5 people were killed in Palestine today, but there is peace in the Middle East. People just don't know about it. Some of you will like this clarification. He said Ilhan Omar...
5 people killed in Palestine today, but there is peace in the Middle East. You just don't know about it.
And he's a sick man. He's a sick man. Something is wrong with him. He says he knows that 5 people were killed in Palestine today, but there is peace in the Middle East. People just don't know about it. Some of you will like this clarification. He said Ilhan Omar married her brother, but that she would deny that now, and that she shouldn't be allowed to be a congressperson, and that she should be deported. And then says Minnesota is a hellhole, and all the Somalis do is complain. And then starts saying that Ilhan says that the Constitution provides, and says you should go back to your own country and figure out your own Constitution. And then he talks about the tariff shelf again, and then he says that Democrats make money when the country does poorly. Hope you enjoyed these 10 minutes.
How fucking insane, dude. And then, so the news story around the illegal strikes is that the survivors, which were clinging to wreckage, people have seen the video now, were in contact with another drug boat. And that's why the Admiral believes that he made the right call by striking them again. So let me ask you, if you're shipwrecked, holding on to a piece of wreckage in the middle of the ocean, right, international waters, way offshore, and you're holding on to a piece of flaming wreckage, what do you think you're calling another boat for? To continue your drug run? I swear to God, if you bring up nets again, I'm banning you. I don't know why you're so goddamn retarded. or what the fuck. If you bring up nets again, I'm banning you. But the SOCOM commander says that because they were in contact with another boat, that he believes they were valid military targets trying to continue their mission.
Can you tell us what you learned? Your impression.
He also looks like he just saw the fucking video from The Ring or some shit, dude. Look how he's acting.
Let me just say this. Admiral Bradley and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff did the right thing.
Right here, I think he's saying they did the right thing by coming and talking to people and doing the interview and answering questions. I think that's what he means.
Yes, Admiral Bradley and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff did the right thing. And
it's got to be bad. This guy's like fucking pale and flush, and what the fuck is going on?
Admiral Bradley defended the decisions taken, and Admiral Bradley has a storied career, and he has my respect, and he should have the respect of all of us. But what I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service.
One of the most troubling things that I've seen in my time, and there's some fucked up shit that they have access to.
Have two individuals in clear distress, without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who were killed.
Literally in the book where it says don't commit war crimes on the ocean. In the don't commit war crime book, when you open it up to the war crime section, it says, here's an example of a war crime to not commit. If you sink a vessel and there are survivors in the water, you cannot kill those survivors. That's the example given in the war crime book.
By the United States.
Can you tell us?
And that was it. What a weird, stilted, like so weird.
Who were killed by the United States.
Can you tell us a little bit more about exactly what was so troubling? What were some of the things that come up?
Under the DoD manual for abiding by the laws of armed conflict, the specific example given of an impermissible action is attacking a shipwreck. Any American who sees the video that I saw will see the United States military attacking shipwrecked sailors. Bad guys, but attacking shipwrecked sailors. Now, there's a whole set of contextual items that the Admiral explained. Yes, they were carrying drugs. They were not in the position to continue their mission in any way. We don't. People will someday see this video and they will see that that video shows, if you don't have the broader context, an attack on shipwrecked sailors.
If you don't have the broader context. Now, the broader context seems to be from leaked reports that they were in communication with another drug boat.
The last thing I'm going to say is that the Admiral confirmed that there had not been a kill them all order, and that there was not an order to grant no quarter.
So does it exonerate Hegseth?
That's all I got.
Do you think the video should be released publicly?
I do.
Do you expect hearings, sir?
He does say, he doesn't answer the Hegseth exonerate question, but he does say he does think the video should be released publicly. But he seems very shaken by whatever the fuck he saw, right? Seems pretty fucking crazy. And we're not going to get much out of the Department of Defense or the Pentagon because this is what the new Pentagon briefings look like, just in case you're wondering.
I watched the first Pentagon briefing under the new rule.
Yes, everybody agrees with you, this Be Real. Everybody agrees with you. Not a single fucking person in this stream disagrees with you. And we have a solution for that. The Coast Guard has done it for over 100 goddamn years. We don't need to invent a magical net carried by drones that attacks boats. And if you say net again, I swear to God, I will ban you. The Coast Guard gets on their boat, drives up beside the other boat, points guns at them, and says, we're searching your boat. This is what a Pentagon briefing looks like now.
I watched the first Pentagon briefing under the new rules so that you didn't have to. I'm Laura Taglianetti.
Trump is not concerned about drugs whatsoever or cartels. He wants a war to depose the Venezuelan leader. How do you get to a war? With fucking strikes.
Mo News. Almost every legacy outlet turned in their press credentials after.
No, it's not a risky mission. You can't find me a single fucking example of a Coast Guard member being shot and killed on one of these drug interdiction missions. It's not. These are like low-level guys who are making 1/10 of minimum wage to drive across the ocean. They don't give a fuck. They'll give you the drugs and then turn around and smile. They don't give a fuck. It's not a risky mission. Trump wants a war. It has nothing to do with drugs. That's why he keeps saying they're seizing fentanyl when there's no fucking fentanyl in Venezuela.
With Mo News. Almost every legacy outlet turned in their press credentials after the Pentagon required reporters to sign a restrictive agreement
let's see.
to give the government broad control over what they could report. Even conservative outlets like Fox and
When Mike Lindell has a spot at the table.
Newsmax said no. So the new press corps includes right-wing social media influencers and podcasters who agreed to the Pentagon rules, as well as Lindell TV, as in the network of Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy turned Major Trump's
the crackhead.
Here we are live at the Pentagon representing Lindell TV. A lot of the media that was in here, they refused to sign paperwork of, it's basically just ethics.
Just ethics,
right?
guys.
Thank God for the opportunity to be in this room, because that's really ultimately why we are here.
Matt Gaetz.
God put you in that room. God put you and the My Pillow crackhead we really just want to thank God because he put us here. That's a news station, allegedly. A news station.
Room, because that's really ultimately why we are here.
Matt Gaetz, the disgraced former
She touches her face 9 times in a 30-second intro.
Florida congressman turned podcaster, was also part of the group of new reporters.
If Nicolas Maduro leaves Venezuela today, what role will the Department of War have in a post-Maduro Venezuela?
But before all of this, there was the question of desk assignments. Several new reporters posted photos claiming that they'd inherited Washington Post Dan Lamoth's old desk. Lamoth, who no longer has credentials, responded on X saying, "Y'all are gonna have to work this one out for yourselves." One of the reporters, Cam Higbee, later said that this might actually be a Bloomberg desk, to which Lamoth replied,
Cam Higbee is not a fucking, he's just a fucking troll that goes around and chases down Antifa.
A first correction from the new press corps. Notably, several questions focused on the story the Washington Post broke, despite no longer being allowed inside of the Pentagon. That's the story we've been telling you about legally questionable strikes on an alleged drug boat in September that included killing survivors.
It is frankly disgusting that the Washington Post would publish something that is so insanely false.
There were no follow-up questions in the room.
No one asked a single question. Why? Because these are all Trump cock-sucking fucking agencies. No one asked a single follow-up on the biggest fucking story that's happened this fucking presidential cycle.
Even though the government has now acknowledged that much of that story is true. Other notable moments include a reporter praising the Pentagon for its operations in Venezuela and asking why Congress members were being so critical.
53% in a recent CBS YouGov poll said they support the strikes on these drug boats, but 70% said no military operations within Venezuela. Nevertheless, members of Congress are increasingly calling for regime change there. What's the Department of War's message to those members of Congress?
And then there was the friendliest question of the day.
Are there plans to host or hold more of these regular press briefings? And if so, how frequently?
We'd love to make it a weekly or bi-weekly tradition.
Hell yeah.
Because the Pentagon this year has actually held very few briefings compared to other administrations.
Hell yeah. Mike Lindell holding it down. We've also thanked at least one bright note that we had coming into a second Trump term was maybe he'll stop fucking grifting. Right? Maybe he's finally done raising money for something. Nope. This is probably the most disingenuous fucking email that he is scamming old people with that I've ever fucking seen. Check this out. This is fucking horrible.
I have been reporting on emails from Team Trump for about 18 months now. I have never seen one that manipulates quite this well. It's a memo from Trump. It's Trump Patriot Power Rankings. Power Rankings. And the email reads, after completing the greatest comeback in American history and a strong blah, 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 I've decided to update my Patriot Power Rankings. If you're getting this message, it's because you are currently in the top 5,000 Patriots.
If you are getting this message, it's because you are currently in the top 5,000 Patriots in this country. He sent this out to everybody. I got it. Do you guys think I'm one of the 5,000 top Trump-supporting power patriots? I got this email.
It's in the country. Oh my gosh, what is MAGA thinking when they receive this? Unfortunately, only the top 1,000 can make it on my special power rankings list. I'm so grateful for you and everything you've done for me and our beautiful country, which is why I'm giving you this rare opportunity to rise up in the power rankings. Do you see where this is going? My team of experts believes you might just be a $25 donation away from breaking into the top 1,000. If you don't want to stop there, you may even be $47 away from the top 500.
My team of experts believes you might be $25 donation away from breaking into the top 1,000 of power patriots. If you don't want to stop there, you may even be $47 away from the top 500. I can only keep this opportunity open for you until midnight, so act fast. You don't want other top patriots to pass you in my rankings.
I can only keep this opportunity open for you until midnight, so act fast. You don't want other top patriots to pass you.
Yeah, it's a strategic fucking lie. There is no list. He sent this to fucking everybody. He's lying to people for donations.
In my rankings.
If that's strategery, then I guess we're in.
My live rankings until I go to sleep tonight. Please, I want to see your name rise up to the #1 spot, move into the top 1,000.
Even if only 1% of people who receive this believe it.
And here are the options.
25 to get top 1,000, 47 top 500, $100 Patriot Power Rankings, $250 Patriot Power Rankings, 500, 1,000, and 3,000.
For how much money you can give him. I mean, it's good for what it's trying to accomplish.
Scamming old people, basically. We have this where Trump went off on Somalian Americans.
Use the word garbage to refer to that community. And I want to play something he said about you today, actually, as well as the community in your city and state. Here he is.
The mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, is saying that he's actually proud to have the largest Somali community in the country, and his police chief.
Well, then he's a fool.
Well, his police chief is also saying
that beautiful state. It's a hellhole right now. And the Somalians should be out of here.
Don Kedak. That's right.
And all they do is complain, complain, complain.
So you're a fool. Your state's a hellhole, and the Somalians have destroyed our country. What's your response, Mayor?
That's neither clever nor is it right. Donald Trump seems to just spew out of his mouth whatever happens to come to mind in the moment. But here's the thing. Come out to Minneapolis. What you won't find is a hellhole, but a beautiful city. It is a city in a park. You won't find a community that is...
I think that's a bot. Hello, what attracted me into the chat is a tag that was under the niche of politics. I think it's a bot.
Tearing down Minneapolis and our Somali Americans, you will find a group of people that is uplifting Minneapolis and is proud to be here. They are proud to call this extraordinary place home. It's obviously disturbing that the President of the United States would use terms like garbage to talk about an entire community that...
Many of them U.S. citizens.
are Americans. Somali Americans are Americans. They make Minneapolis a better place, and we're proud to have these Americans in our city. And I think the other thing that we ought to look at is the fact that if they're just indiscriminately going after people, due process is violated, habeas corpus is violated. The entire Constitution is in and of itself being thrown in a garbage. So you want to use the term garbage, that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing right now to the Constitution of the United States.
How disgusting to talk about your citizens or even immigrants like that. I don't know. That's especially if, like, I might say some fucked up shit, but I'm some guy on YouTube, right? Some guy on Twitch. But for the president of the United States, also they're planning on throwing Kristi Noem under the plane, I guess, instead of bus. Here is the first portion. Let me make sure. Yeah. Here's the first portion.
Yesterday was the first day of the Supreme Court's winter crackdown. Was anybody else surprised when Justice Sotomayor dropped the people's elbow on Deputy Solicitor General? Oof, that lady's got moves. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm Brino, and this is the Morning Report on the Federal Courts for December 2nd, 2025. Double tap your screen. Comment whether John Cena should rejoin the federal bench. I used to love his dissents. And watch the first minute right now, even if you're coming back, so we hit the FYP. I'm going to be live again today at 10 a.m. Please subscribe at the bottom of the screen there to keep me going. But for now,
we're only really interested in this first case he goes over.
Grab your coffee. Let's get to the news. We're going to start with JGG v. Trump. Now, this is a case filed back in March, try to stop the Trump administration from flying a bunch of people to El Salvador and dumping them in CCOP prison. And there are like 5 or 10 other cases intertwined with this one, including Abrego Garcia. I've lost track. Attorney Dye is the encyclopedia on this case. So on March 15th or 16th, Judge Boasberg, D.C.'s chief judge, issued.
You guys remember Boasberg? Boasberg is the one that said, "Turn the planes around now."
From the bench to halt these planes, turn them around if they've taken off, and none of that happened. After 6 months of appeals, it looks like Judge Boasberg has the go-ahead to start tracking down a clear timeline of exactly what happened that day and in what order and who's responsible for ignoring his directive. Now, some of you may have listened to the hearing just before Thanksgiving where he sort of opened the door on this. Well, the door is now off its hinges. This is happening. So, on Friday, Judge Boasberg issued a short but very important order. The first important thing it says is that the government has told him who they're going to be throwing under the bus here. He asked which official was responsible for the decision to launch those planes, and the government all pointed to Kristi Noem.
Who is ultimately responsible for the planes leaving, not returning, and landing in El Salvador and sending those people into the prison? Kristi Noem. Everybody say Kristi Noem.
No honor amongst thieves, I guess. Or maybe she's stepping up. Either one of those is possible. The judge also ordered that by this Friday, he wanted everyone involved in the decision not to stop those planes to submit a declaration about exactly what their role was in the decision-making process. So that should be a fun read. But I need to address one more really important thing here because the government's...
That's coming up. That'll be today or tomorrow. We'll probably get some of that.
Still asserting that because the Court of Appeals later overturned Judge Boasberg's order, they didn't have to follow it. In other words...
Now, this is never true. Okay, there is entire case law built against this. I think he goes over one here about students' First Amendment violation. But basically, if a judge orders you to do something, and let's say your lawyer tells you it's 100%, people around you tell you 100%, the news media says you're 100%, that you're going to get this overturned on appeal. It does not matter. It does not matter. The judge's orders still stand until the appeal goes through. So listen closely to this. Because the government's only argument is like, hey, well, one, the verbal order and the written order didn't exactly include the exact same phrasing. And we thought the verbal order wasn't binding. And two, we knew we'd win later, so that's why we didn't follow your order.
Knew at the time that it was going to be unlawful, so they didn't follow it. And they were vindicated later by the Court of Appeals. And this is the argument being sold in some media outlets. So I want to, I can't resist a good story, right? So gather around, kids, while I tell you the story of Walker v. Birmingham. So, Walker v. Birmingham is about a group of kids who were protesting Jim Crow laws in Alabama in the 60s. It's pretty redeemable bad behavior under the circumstances. And One day, a small group of them was ordered to stop protesting, stop encouraging other people to protest, stop making noise, just generally a textbook First Amendment violation.
Yes. So 100% everybody knew this was a local racist judge that was violating their First Amendment. So you can't make noise, stop protesting, you can't tell anybody else to protest. None of this can happen, right? So everybody in the world knew this is a First Amendment violation, and they would win that.
These students told the Alabama court that they could go duck themselves. And they said it loud. They said it at a press conference. They went right ahead and kept doing their thing. So the court held them in contempt. And they appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court took one look at this story and said, wow, you guys have got one heck of a First Amendment violation. I just wish that you had brought it to us. See, if you had appealed the Alabama court order and brought that to us, we would have some fun tearing that apart. But instead, you brought us an appeal on the contempt order. And the contempt order just says...
Because they were held in contempt for telling them to get fucked. We're going to keep protesting. You can't stop us. So the original case was 100% a violation of First Amendment. But they didn't appeal that. They appealed being held in contempt for not following a judge's orders. And even though that judge's orders were technically illegal, it doesn't matter. You still have to follow them.
You violated the court's order. Did you violate the court's order?
Yes.
You did? Then why are we here? And the point of this case is that even when the Supreme Court agrees that your constitutional rights were probably violated, you still don't get to decide on your own to just ignore a court order. The court in Walker...
Neither does Kristi Noem or the government or anybody else.
Quote, no man can be the judge of his own case, however exalted his station, however righteous his moves.
However exalted the station or righteous the moves, you cannot be your own judge. You cannot say, everybody's telling me this is going to get overturned, so I know I don't have to follow this order. You can't be your own judge.
And this court cannot hold that the petitioners were constitutionally free to ignore all procedures of law and carry their battle to the streets. So, here the Justice Department says, we didn't violate the court's order because the Court of Appeals later disagreed with the order, said we were right and the order was wrong. But it was too late by then. You'd already taken your battle to the streets by then. The damage was done. So this is an extreme example. Walker is an outlier, but it's a great demonstration case. This is why it's one of the ones in the textbooks. Because no matter how sure you are that the lower court order isn't going to be upheld, you still don't get to make the decision on your own. Ever. No matter how high your station. And this is what it comes back to by Kristi Noem in the... Okay. So one more quick case, and then we're going to get to SCOTUS. So back in June, the Trump administration sued the...
All right, so we're not super worried about that, but there is more to this. So if we go here, I think it's this one.
Things are getting interesting as a federal judge pursues holding government officials in contempt for
This was actually before the last video we just watched.
defying his orders.
It's got more information in it, though.
Judge Boasberg picked back up where he left off in March. For some background, Judge Boasberg was so over this administration's bullshit that he was preparing to sanction them, specifically for defying his orders requiring the government turn around and ground planes carrying hundreds of unlawfully detained individuals that were headed for CCOT. Now, it's important to note that these contempt proceedings were put on ice by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals until recently. So as soon as the appeals court gave him the thumbs up, Judge Boasberg said, giddy up. In a court hearing last week, Judge Boasberg stated, quote, justice requires me to move promptly on this. He added, quote, I certainly intend to find out what happened that day, and the government can assist me to whatever degree it wishes. And of course, the Justice Department has been crashing out over this. DOJ attorney Tiberius Davis argued that because the Supreme Court allowed the government to proceed with this prisoner transfer, there is no basis for Judge Boasberg to investigate whether officials intentionally defied his directive. But a unanimous decision by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals stated that Judge Boasberg has the authority to pursue these contempt proceedings. In response to the Justice Department's whining, Judge Boasberg stated, quote, I appreciate the fact that you disagree with 6 judges on the Court of Appeals. Fast forward to a court filing submitted by the Justice Department on Monday. In that filing, the Justice Department conceded who was involved in defying Judge Boasberg's orders. Now we already know that the former Assistant Deputy Attorney General, Emile Bove, was all about saying fuck the courts. Now we already know that the former Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, Emile Bove, was all about saying fuck the courts. And according to this filing, we now know that one of the tactics the agency is using to give the middle finger to the courts is to split hairs. It notes that during a court hearing on March 15th, Judge Boasberg ordered the government to return all detainees who are no longer class members in this case, be returned to the United States. And then within the hour, Judge Boasberg issued a written order enjoining the government from conducting prisoner transfers from the United States to El Salvador. And the Justice Department argues that that written order says nothing about returning class members who were already flying across international airspace. And they further argue that because the verbal directive is not binding, the Justice Department didn't violate the court's order. Now, the filing also notes that Deputy Assistant Attorney General Drew Ensign shared both Judge Boasberg's verbal directive and his written order with the DHS and with the Justice Department.
So he did share both of these, the written order and the verbal order, with them.
And it was at this point when Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and Emile Bove provided their alternate legal advice. They relayed their advice to DHS Acting General Counsel Joseph Mazzara, who shared their advice as well as his own alternate legal advice with the DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. And then Timu Ice-Barbie gave the directive to land the planes in El Salvador. As justification.
So she 100% made the decision. After being briefed by everybody, she pulled the trigger. She made the decision.
For this, the Justice Department cites Judge Gregory Katsas, who conveniently agrees with them. And gosh, I wonder why he would. Perhaps it's because he was appointed by their boss.
Not only is he appointed by Trump, but he's one of Trump's top picks for the Supreme Court if an opening happens.
And also worked for him during the first administration, where he conveniently advised senior White House staff on managing legal issues involving executive branch agencies. It's also important to note that Judge Katsas is so favored by the Federalist Society that he was put on the list of potential nominees to the Supreme Court in 2020, and is on the list again should an opening appear during the second term. And I'm sure Justice Clarence Thomas is putting in a good reference for him, since he clerked for Justice Clarence Thomas when he was on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and once again once he rose to the Supreme Court. It's also to his benefit that Judge Gregory Katsas is a top feeder judge for law clerks to the Supreme Court. In fact, he has sent at least 18 of his law clerks to the Supreme Court since the October 2019 term. So basically, Judge Katsas has an incentive to give the administration anything they want, especially given he's this thirsty for a Supreme Court seat. Needless to say, citing Judge Katsas in your court filing is just a big conflict of interest. And I doubt it'll go over well with Judge Boasberg. But then again, we already know that this administration relies on activist judges to bail them out. The accusation...
And then, yes, accusations are confessions.
...is always a confession.
They're using their activist judges to offset the rule of law. So it seems like if anything happens with this Boasberg, planes landing, recalled, whatever, it's going to fall on Kristi Noem. Then we had this just recently happen.
The administration is threatening to attack Colorado if the state doesn't transfer one of the president's allies and co-conspirators to federal custody. Strangely, the states' rights folks have been silent on the matter. Now, the important thing to remember here is that the president cannot pardon individuals who've been convicted of state crimes. That includes former Republican Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters. In October, Tina Peters was sentenced to 9 years in prison for pulling a Sidney Powell. Remember that Sidney Powell is one of the president's former lawyers and co-conspirator in Georgia. Powell faced criminal charges for illegally accessing and attempting to steal data from voting systems in Coffee County. Tina Peters was tapped to do just that in Mesa County, Colorado. And her co-conspirator was none other than My Pillow guy Mike Lindell. Incidentally, the My Pillow guy filed to run for governor of Minnesota yesterday. But that's a story for another day. Now, what Tina Peters did is...
Trump just put on Truth Social, the sleazebag governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, refuses to allow an elderly woman, Tina Peters, who was unfairly convicted of what Democrats do, cheating on elections, out of jail. She was convicted for trying to stop Democrats from stealing Colorado votes in the election. She was preserving election records, which she was obligated to do under federal law. She snuck a unverified person in and let them steal information off the election machines. Someone that Mike Lindell flew down there, she snuck this person in, used a co-worker's credentials to get in for him, and then let him steal information, your information, off the election machines. There was no rigging, there was no cheating, there was no nothing. She abused her position of power, and she has no remorse. In fact, when she was given an opportunity to speak before sentencing, she used a PowerPoint presentation to try to convince everybody that the election was stolen.
Egregious for a county clerk. I've mentioned this in previous coverage of her trial, but Tina Peters stole an employee's badge and gave it to some guy to access these voting systems, which led to a jury convicting her on 7 counts, 4 of which are felonies and 3 misdemeanors. And it's important to note that Tina Peters was convicted by a jury of her peers in a county that went for the president by 22 points.
A very red county convicted her.
A deep red county in an R+5 congressional district. Also, the case brought against her wasn't pursued by a Democratic district attorney. It was pursued by a Republican one. As you can see, that doesn't matter to this administration, which is why on November 12th, the Federal Bureau of Prisons formally requested the Colorado Department of Corrections transfer custody to them. Unless
they want her put in a federal prison so they can fucking... Trump even said she has now served more than 1 year in jail and has 8 years to go. On top of everything else, she's a cancer survivor. Who gives a fuck? This lightweight governor who has allowed his state to go to hell, Trinde Aragua, anyone, should be ashamed of himself. Free Tina. Who gives a fuck, dude? She did what you claim you're trying to stop, remember?
let's just say that MAGA isn't keeping their scheme to free Tina Peters hush-hush. Their grand plan is to give Tina Peters a get-out-of-jail-free card by claiming that she's a witness in the investigation of the investigation into the effort to change the outcome of 2020. Needless to say, the Colorado Department of Corrections said, "Fuck you, make me."
So once they get her to federal prison, they'll say she's a witness and that her time was reduced for cooperation.
A spokesperson for the CDOC told 9 News, quote, "Requests to transfer inmates from the Colorado Department of Corrections emanate from the state and not from other entities. The department is not currently seeking any transfer." Unfortunately, it took Governor Jared Polis way too long to support the CDOC's decision. In fact, there was a bipartisan effort by state lawmakers pressuring the governor to affirm that Colorado isn't even entertaining the idea. Even Democratic Senator Michael Bennet issued a statement on the matter, in which he wrote, quote, "Tina Peters was convicted in the court of law. Now she needs to serve out her sentence in Colorado. Under no circumstances should she be released." It took Governor Polis until today to respond. And all it took was the commander-in-sleep calling him a sleazebag. And a lightweight who has, quote, allowed his state to go to hell. And because he can't help himself, sprinkled in a little dog whistle. Governor Polis responded, quote, "We would all benefit if the president spent less time posting attacks and instead worked on ending tariffs and making Christmas more affordable for American families." I guess he didn't get the memo that the president posted that affordability was a Democratic scam.
Oh, yeah.
Professional, the president also called Colorado lawmakers crooked Colorado politicians.
A brave, innocent patriot who has been tortured by crooked Colorado politicians, including the big mail-in ballot supporting the governor of the state. Let Tina Peters out of jail right now. She did nothing wrong except catching the Democrats cheating the election. She's an old woman and very sick. If she is not released, I am going to take harsh measures.
And then demanded the state let Tina Peters out of jail right now. And then threatened, quote, "If she is not released, I am going to take harsh measures." Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Meanwhile, Tina Peters' attorney advocated for sending in the military, which he floated on Steve Bannon's podcast.
He said on Steve Bannon's podcast they might have to send in, I think they said, the 101st Airborne.
He also claimed that he's going to petition the Supreme Court. And he also leaned into anti-Semitism and satanic panic, which is definitely not helping the Republican Party overcome accusations of anti-Semitism, especially when you say with your full chest that Colorado
says Colorado leaders blocking her release are Satan Jews. That's what her lawyer said. On the Steve Bannon podcast, he said that they would have to send in the 101st to free Tina Peters from Colorado's jail because they won't turn her over to federal custody so Trump can release her as a witness. Anyways, he went on Steve Bennett's podcast and said the Satan Jews is who is keeping Tina Peters in jail, got convicted her.
I'm calling on President Trump, and I did that in an X post last night on Getter, not because she's 70, not because she's a Gold Star mom, and not because she's likely to die in prison, but because Tina Peters is a witness to the 2020 theft of an election. The president, as chief magistrate, could send the marshals into the Colorado prison. There are federal custodial witness protection programs that you could put Tina Peters under that would supersede Colorado law. You could take her to Washington, D.C. You could put her up in, this would be what I would do anyway, put her up in Blair House for a few weeks while she recovers. Then I would depose somebody or put someone from the Justice Department or the Assistant Secretary over at DHS, Dave Harvilitz, and I would use her as a witness as we're investigating the 2020 election. She is a witness to that. It looks to me and to many others like there was foreign interference in that 2020 election. There are national security implications to that and to any future elections. And so the perfectly sensible thing to do would be to use the power of the law such that the president has today as chief magistrate and get her out of that solitary confinement. Not to free her, don't supersede Colorado law in that sense, put her to work. She knows things. She fought for those things, and use those parts of your government, Mr. President, that want to investigate the 2020 election, which you yourself believe was stolen. Use Tina Peters to help with that. I'm calling on President Trump, and I did that in an X post last night on Getter, not because she's 70, not because she's a Gold Star mom, and not because she's likely to die in prison.
Here's his full quote. Hold on. The synagogue of Satan Jews stick together as traitors to our nation and to the people of Colorado. They have robbed Tina of her life, the citizens of Colorado of their dignity, and hidden in plain sight a company of demons, dominion. He then said that these officials deserve to be tried for treason in military tribunals and hung by the president. Like, her lawyer's a fucking lunatic, but Mike Lindell's the one who sent that lawyer. What do we expect?
Lawmakers are Satan Jews. For that rhetoric alone, Peter Tickton should be joining his client in prison. And also for being childhood friends with the president. He even wrote a book about it to grift off of his relationship with the president. So no surprise here that he's also an attorney for the president, having filed a lawsuit against Hillary Clinton on his behalf. For what it's worth, I'm also not surprised that he represented Meghan Markle's half-sister in her bullshit lawsuit against the Duchess. So as you can see, the administration is putting its full weight behind freeing Tina Peters, and they're laying the groundwork to do so by force. Which underscores that the administration gives zero fucks about the rule of law or the Constitution.
But that also leads into Nevada. So we were just talking about Colorado. Well, what about Nevada? What about their fake electors?
4 days after the president pardoned Nevada's 6 fake electors, the Nevada Supreme Court unanimously stated
Trump pardoned these fake electors, by the way. You guys know that, right? Trump pardoned these fake electors that he and the Republicans had signed up illegally to try to steal the election.
beer. These 6 criminals have escaped.
But the state said, no. You may pardon them federally, fine. But What about the state crimes they committed?
Nevada's 6 fake electors, the Nevada Supreme Court unanimously stated, hold our fucking beer. These 6 criminals have escaped federal charges thanks to the felon in office, but that pardon doesn't extend to state charges. It's important to note that late last year, Clark County District Judge Mary Kay Holthus dismissed the case. She ultimately found that the state filed charges in an improper venue in Clark County and that the charges should have been filed in Carson City. So the state appealed that decision. And on Thursday, the state Supreme Court overturned that decision, writing, quote, the venue was properly laid in Clark County because...
Okay. I want to sound respectful. A Gold Star mom is someone whose son died in service to the nation, usually in combat. Every time I hear about Gold Star moms, they died overseas in combat. Tina Peters' son died in a civilian air show in New York City while he was a Navy SEAL. So the military was performing in a military air show in New York State, and he was on the jump and died as part of that jump. Okay?
Offenses charged were not complete upon mailing, but rather necessarily involved the receipt of the certificates at the location to which they were mailed, which means the crime didn't stop upon putting the certificates in the mailbox. The crime also includes the destination to which those certificates were mailed, which was in Clark County. The Supreme Court notes that the defendants do not dispute this fact, which means this case gets to proceed in Clark County, which the state intended in the first place. And like I mentioned, this was a unanimous decision by the Nevada Supreme Court.
You're still a Gold Star parent if your son dies in the military service. But usually the ones that we hear like using that as a defense, it's because they died in combat, right? But she's still a Gold Star mom. He still died when he was in the military as part of military service. That's true. But usually people don't bring that up as much when it's like, oh, well, sucks. That's horrible. And I'm sorry your son died in military service, but he wasn't killed by an enemy combatant.
Supreme Court. Only one judge recused because she's neighbors with one of the defendants. But my favorite part about this decision was it was written by Justice Lydia Stiglitz, who was appointed by a former Republican governor of Nevada, Brian Sandoval, which undermines the Republican talking point about activist judges. It's brilliant. Now, if you're familiar with my work, I love footnotes. In one footnote, the Supreme Court noted that the defendants sought pretrial habeas relief, which means that the fake electors asked the court to put the burden of proof on the state to justify why they brought these charges against them. This footnote points out that they filed several petitions for habeas relief, and that the district court didn't address the habeas petitions, but in dismissing the case, the court mooted all other pending matters. Now, the state Supreme Court made it clear that a criminal offense may be prosecuted in the county where it is committed, or if committed in multiple counties, where it is committed in part, or where the acts or effects thereof constituting or requisite to the consummation of the offense occur. The court ultimately concluded that Clark County was a proper venue because the offenses involved false statements directed to Judge Due at the federal court in Las Vegas, which is in Clark County. They explained that the fake electors directed the documents to be sent to the federal court in order to perpetrate a fraud there. And then the Nevada Supreme Court uses textualism to prove their point, which is another signal to the Federalist Society that we too can play this fucking game. So the opinion cites 2 Nevada laws and a legal dictionary. And as they point out in the decision, both statutes anticipate action on receipt when acts of offering or uttering are alleged.
So even though Trump's pardoning these people, the court ruled that, yeah, you can try them. So they basically had a change of venue thing for the Clark County thing, saying, oh, well, you can't charge them because they mailed their paperwork outside of Clark County. Yeah, but they sent it to Clark County, a fake elector scheme, and that's part of the crime too, the reception of the mail.
Which, once again, the defendants don't dispute this. Then the court turned to proper venue. The Nevada Supreme Court notes that while the state of Nevada has not specifically addressed whether venue for crimes involving sending a fraudulent instrument from one county to another lies in the receiving jurisdiction, other courts have. One of those courts was the United States Supreme Court in re Palliser. In a footnote, the state Supreme Court notes that Palliser preceded federal law in which Congress provided that when any offense against the United States is begun in one judicial district and completed in another, it shall be deemed to have been committed in either. The opinion also cites similar rulings in Oklahoma, Montana, Oregon, and Florida Supreme Courts, as well as by a New York County Court, Texas state law, and the federal circuit courts, notably the 4th and 5th Circuit Courts. In United States v. Elbaz, the 4th Circuit determined that the venue for a wire fraud charge is proper both where the wire transmission was sent and where it was received. And in United States v. Leahy, the 5th Circuit ruled that the venue under the various false claim and false statement statutes is proper either where the false statement is prepared and mailed or where it is received. It should also be noted that the Supreme Court is not buying the fake electors' excuse that they accidentally used the Clark County address to mail the certificates to Judge Due instead of a Washoe County address. The Supreme Court found that the defendants have provided no authority suggesting that such a mistake was material to the venue analysis, meaning that their mistake doesn't meet the burden of proof that the state filed charges in the wrong county. In one last footnote, the court notes that the defendants argued that federal law supersedes state law. However, the defendants failed to raise this argument and therefore waived it, which means that they didn't raise this argument properly before the court on appeal. And with that, Nevada's 6 fake electors get to face accountability in the state of Nevada.
Hell yeah. They ought to be prosecuted. So they, as an example, that no one else can fucking do this shit, right? You can't just have an alternate slate of electors just because you think you won and there was cheaters or whatever, right? It's insane. You guys remember, first of all, this shit right here is terrible. Look how terrified this woman is, a U.S. citizen. Look how terrified she is.
Leave me alone! Video obtained by CNN shows
they don't go on her property.
Federal agents wearing ice vests chasing a woman back to her home in Maria, Louisiana, a suburb of New Orleans. Jacelyn, 22-year-old.
Someone in a comment said, why is she running if she's innocent? Because they don't give a fuck if you're innocent or not.
Old mother says she's a U.S. citizen who was born and raised in Louisiana. She asked that her last name not be used to protect her privacy. She says she was walking home from the grocery store when the masked agents attempted to approach her.
So she's walking right here. They pull up to her and do this thing where they start questioning her from the car, and then they all jump out.
A few feet from her house. Jacelyn can be heard yelling at the men as she runs.
There's a second car. They were both doing it, right?
Her home.
It was coordinated with both vehicles.
Moments later, a man identified.
See, there's that first car back.
As Jacelyn's stepfather is heard yelling at the agents before they are seen heading back to a vehicle.
No, you're the one that just said it. We weren't even looking for you. Hey, so what are you looking for? This is a public area. Okay?
So he said, are y'all fucking looking for me and you're harassing my stepdaughter? They're like, no, we told you we're not looking for you. This is a public area. We're just looking for whoever.
I don't want to speak to you. Well, I don't want to talk to you either. You're the one talking to me. Hispanic people.
The only way to react to these motherfuckers.
CNN has reached out to the Department of Homeland Security for more information.
And we also have a federal agent stepping up. This guy's name is Ed the Fed, and he's stepping up about these masked fucking agents snatching people up.
Hey, gang.
It's actually a really good video from somebody in the know, right?
Fed here. We have a problem, and the problem is ICE and how it's behaving. And today, we're going to talk about the whole masking and failure to identify issue. So take a listen to what I have to say, and then use your own critical thinking to either accept in part, or completely dismiss what I have to say. I'm coming to you today from in front of what my friend calls my me wall, because I want you to know 3 things about me. First, I was a federal agent for more than 20 years, and I was proud to do that job. I've got a lot of hardware here in the form of awards from the U.S. Attorney's Office.
No, they didn't know she was a U.S. citizen. They were just profiling her because she was brown. But they have to come on your property like that. They have to have a warrant signed by a judge.
So I think and hope that I was reasonably good at my job. Second, I wasn't an ICE agent. I was a special agent for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Third, although I was not an ICE agent, I worked with ICE and HSI agents all the time. After all, Fish and Wildlife special agents working in Los Angeles, like me, work on smuggling investigations, and those crimes overlap with a lot of what ICE and HSI also do. I have a lot of friends who currently work for ICE and HSI, and many more friends who recently retired from those 2 agencies. So what are ICE and HSI? Well, ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. HSI stands for Homeland Security Investigations. They both employ special agents. ICE also employs what are known as...
There is one portion I disagree with him on. He says that none of these people want to be out here profiling. There's some of them that fucking enjoy it, right? There's some of them that are basically sworn in like an emergency situation. They've not been trained. They're just fucking racist.
As enforcement and removal officers, or EROs. The mission of an ERO has always been to locate, apprehend, and deport illegal aliens. There's nothing unusual about ICE agents and EROs conducting immigration checks at businesses or even like a Home Depot parking lot type situation. It happens, and it has happened under all of the recent previous administrations, both parties. Typically, however, it involves a limited number of officers, and they prioritize known illegal aliens involved in serious crimes. Most
nose cracks
ICE and HSI spend their time working on long-term, complex investigations involving everything from child porn to human trafficking to drug smuggling to terrorism to helping wildlife cases. The Trump administration has recently turned all of that on its head and put tremendous pressure on both ICE and HSI to meet quotas for how many illegal aliens they're locating, apprehending, and deporting. The agents aren't happy about it. All of my contacts tell me that morale is in the toilet, and many agents in both agencies are trying to get out or planning to retire as soon as they're eligible to do so.
I would say that's probably true about the people he knows because they're career agents, right? And they're like, this isn't my job. I like doing investigations. I like finding criminals. I like doing not just running up any brown person and seeing how fucking big a dickhead we can be to them. But the new people that have been brought on under this new administration, that's exactly what they're for. That's why they got the swastikas and they're half Proud Boys and all the, you know what I mean? That's what they're there for.
They would rather be conducting investigations of serious criminals. They would rather be working to prevent real crimes. They'd like to work with their peers like me at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Well, I'm sure there's a bunch of people that's probably got so many years in. They're not actually the agents on the ground doing these things. And they're like, fuck, you know, I got 8 months or a year or something. I can retire with full benefits.
They don't want to be chasing down farm workers. A problem has arisen from this increase in public operations. The public's getting pissed off. Some people who have witnessed these raids have started to confront the agents and have taken photos of them, figured out who they are. And in some instances, this has led to the agents' names and home addresses being posted on the web or social media. That's what's known as doxing. Not surprisingly, the agents and EROs are concerned that someone might violently target them or their families at their homes. That's why they have taken to wearing masks and refusing to identify themselves out in the field. I get it. I understand the concern, but I'm sorry, that's not a valid excuse, and here's why. First,
that's not enough. Any officer at any time can be doxed.
And foremost, of course.
Any person at any time can be doxed.
Federal agents work for the public. They are public servants. Public servants do not conduct their business in private or with anonymity. Before I became a federal agent, I worked for Christine Gregoire, who was then the Attorney General for the state of Washington. She used to remind us that as public prosecutors, we had a duty to protect the rights of all people, including the rights of the people we were prosecuting. Now that's public service. All ICE agents, HSI agents, and EROs attend the same federal academy, and they receive the same training that other federal agents receive, including agents like me who worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I know how they were trained.
I put some Vaseline on my nose. Hope that helps.
Conducting operations in the field or when asked. They all carry badges, they all carry credentials, and all of those badges and credentials have a unique number on them. During an operation in public, somebody in an ICE or HSI group should present their credentials and name to anyone who asks. They don't have to give their full names. They can simply say, my name is Agent Newcomer and I'm with ICE. When an ICE agent, HSI agent, or ERO tells a member of the public that they are federal and don't have to provide ID, that's obnoxious, but they're correct. There is no federal law requiring them to identify themselves. However, that's not how they were trained to behave. In 2021, Congress did make an effort to address this problem. Inside the Defense Authorization Act for that year was a provision that was eventually codified under Title 10 of the U.S. Code in Section 723. You can read it yourself. Just Google 10 U.S.C. 723. Read it. Don't just believe or dismiss what I'm telling you. Read it yourself. You don't need to be a lawyer to find and read the law in this country. The law requires all federal officers to wear clothing or gear that identifies their agency and their name or some other unique individual identifier like a badge number. Unfortunately,
the bill says when supporting civil disturbances. And because they're not claiming that they're supporting civil disturbances, that they're doing these snatch and grabs, that they don't have to follow this law.
It's drafted too narrowly, and it only applies to federal law enforcement working in support of efforts to address civil disturbances. Since ICE agents, HSI agents, and EROs are conducting their regular duty to locate, apprehend, and deport illegal aliens, they aren't subject to that law. But clearly, this is what Congress and the American people want. So by playing these games with us, ICE, HSI, DHS, Kristi Noem, Tom Homan, they are just asking for legislation
I hope that works.
More restrictions on them and all other federal agents. Next, the fact that a fanatic might take your photo or make your name and address public is a risk all federal agents take every day. It's part of the job. Doxing with the intent to threaten or intimidate a federal agent is a federal crime already. It's a felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison.
We wouldn't let any other agency act like this. We shouldn't let ICE act like this, right?
The fix for the problem of doxing and intimidation is not to hide your identity, but is to prosecute anybody who does it. And that's happening. A search warrant was recently served in Los Angeles on a person who did just that to an ICE agent. They're being held accountable. Now,
imagine goddamn, you're driving down the road and out of nowhere a fire engine comes and rams your car and pushes you off the side of the road, busts your fucking window and drags you out after cutting your seatbelt and throws you in the back of a car and arrests you for several hours. And you're like, what the fuck did I do, fireman? And they're like, we thought you might have an open flame in there. They're literally ramming boxing cars in, ramming off the road, and leaving them abandoned to get towed. That's their new tactic.
Strengthening existing laws so that doxing of any federal employee, simply for doing their job, regardless of whether there is intimidation attached to that or not, is a crime. However, the fact that someone might do that to you is not a valid reason to hide the name of your agency, certainly, your badge number, or even your last name. These same agents who are claiming a need to be anonymous, they're the same agents who routinely show their faces in court, who testify under oath after stating their full names, and who sign publicly available documents every single day using their real and full names. Look, with anonymity comes the ability to act without accountability, which is inherently dangerous. No self-respecting law enforcement officer in this country should want that. It's the leadership at ICE and HSI who are giving their agents permission to behave like this and encouraging them to actually believe the lie that their safety depends on anonymity. I promise you that the blowback will be severe. Someday the Trump era will end, and I am confident that there will be federal legislation requiring federal officers to identify themselves and to not intentionally conceal their identity when they perform routine duties. The future of ICE as the agency we know today is likely also at risk. I doubt they'll be eliminated, but I'm sure drastic changes are in their future, assuming, of course, that we hold on to our democracy and our basic commitment to the rule of law. You know, America is not as great today as it was 4, 8, 12, 16, 50 years ago. In my lifetime, I've never seen it as ugly or unpredictable as it is today. I was a law enforcement officer for 20 years and a prosecutor for 10 years before that. I want stability, efficiency, law and order. I don't care what party delivers it, but it ain't Donald Trump or the current Republican leadership. They aren't making us great. They're making us awful.
All right, guys. That's your ICE update, I guess. So someone remind me tomorrow where we parked, okay? Keep it in the old skull there, that we need to go over. Let me look up this guy's name. Ryan Walters. Somebody remind me, that's the Oklahoma State Superintendent, okay? The Oklahoma State Superintendent. A bunch of new stuff. Apparently, once he left office, suddenly that office started filling out everybody's, or completing everybody's FOIA requests. They had been stonewalled until he left. Now everybody's FOIA requests that they asked. And there are some crazy things. If it wasn't 1:30 already, we'd go over it tonight. But we will go over it tomorrow. Ryan Walters with Oklahoma and the FOIA requests they got back. Dirty deals he did, giving a bonus to his assistant right before he leaves and takes the assistant with him to the new company. A gigantic bonus to her, by the way, knowing that he was leaving, he was taking her with him, more than likely. Lee Greenwood deal he did on the Bibles, all that shit's coming out now. So we're going over Ryan Walters from the Oklahoma State Superintendent on the next show. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Please consider supporting the show to help pay the bills around here. That's how we pay the bills. It hasn't been recently paying for itself. It's kind of been going in the hole, which that's fine for a little bit, but I can't do that forever. So if you want to support the show, use the Just Quick Tools link or the Buy Me a Coffee link, any of the links. But if you want the links, they're at the Just Quick Tools website. I'll drop there. I'll drop those there. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for being here. Yeah, you guys have a good night, and we'll see you around the next one. I gotta go check on the fire before I go to bed and then get some sleep. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Support the show, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good night. Love you. See you. Bye.
But I can tell you this about if this douchebag happens to see this particular show, you don't.
Thank you for the donations tonight. I appreciate it.
Call out the people on this planet.
Starting to get like Bird over here.
And tell them exactly who they are and tell them the rest of the world who they are. You don't have the fork and balls.
I don't care if the show just breaks even. I just can't lose money on it for too long. I know Christmas is coming up. The economy's shit right now. I understand all that. That's fine. But eventually we got to get back to where it supports itself.
You better buckle up because you ain't seen nothing yet. Here we go. I think I started some shit. Piss 'em off. It's about to get lit. Get the placing them bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet.
And they say that I'm a lunatic. Well, listen, bitch, I came equipped with a quick wit and a 6th sense for the stupid shit. Well, my true believer, y'all need Jesus. Praise the Lord, head to the extreme. All these false fucking prophets who profit off of gossip.
How long do you think it'll take before we can get Bertle to say my name again?
He hammers like
Squirtle Bertle.
he's strapped to the shaft, eating his chest like he's King Kong. Starving for attention, I'ma make your gut burst. I'll be your huckleberry, I can quench that thirst. Baby eating lizard people, alien sex. What's next? Trump in a dress, fucking Flynn on his desk. A retard in a vest, climbing up 5G towers. Cause you told him if he did, he'd get fucking superpowers.
Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in them bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in them bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet.
I used to find clues too when I was high on shrooms. I found myself a tunnel that led to Jason Q's bedroom. Open his closet, I found some of his meat rockets. I strapped them to my shoes and then I flew through the roof. I found myself in orbit strapped to an F-16. High on amphetamine, with Trump in between. Put on a light coat of baby oil and saluted the troops. He tapped me on the shoulder and said, "This is gonna be it." Whoa, wait. Stop. What? What? I'll get my files. Wait, what are you doing? Stop. Hold on. Fucking stop. Dude, come on. Seriously. My mom's an alcoholic. Oh, give me oh my God. Damn it.
Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place.
Oh, Fake Runny Eggs yesterday was asking if he got banned. It's because the bot got him with rape gangs, I guess. The Stream Elements bot timed him out.
It's about to get lit. Get the place in them bets, you know that
I just saw that pop up.
better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet.
Round 3. Down goes Nino. Please say it isn't so. Got him backed up on the ropes, trying to ram it down his throat. Now things are getting rocking. He was doing so well. It's all over. Hands on his shoulders. They ringing his bell. You got Frog News Network doing no damn research. They be working copy on Cox and came first. 9th inning, second string. And
Good night, guys.
no hitters. Ass on throwing bullshit shit and bro.
I'm gonna go check on the fire, get some to eat, and try to get some rest tonight, I guess.
Fuck is in my window.
Love you, see you, bye.